Now, the greatest radio shows of all time.
Suspense.
The Shadow Node.
Washington calling David Harding, counter spy.
Classic radio theater.
The Great Gildersleeve.
Fibber McGee and Molly.
Dragnet. Gunsmoke.
The Lone Ranger.
Now, step back into a time machine with your host, Wyatt Cox.
Good evening, friends of the Inner Sanctum.
A West Coast radio program, the Signal Oil program, The Whistler, as it was originally broadcast back on May 21st, 1950. This episode entitled The Return.
And now, stay tuned for the program that is rated tops in popularity for a longer period of time than any other West Coast program in radio history. The Signal Oil program, The Whistler. Signal, the famous Go Farther gasoline, invites you to sit back and enjoy another strange story by The Whistler.
I am the Whistler, and I know many things, for I walk by night. I know many strange tales hidden in the hearts of men and women who have stepped into the shadows. Yes, I know the nameless terrors of which they dare not speak.
And now for the Signal Oil Company, The Whistler's strange story, The Return.
Dr. Sheridan's car screeched to a stop before the heavy stone steps of the wide porch, and the doctor rushed up to the door of the Denton townhouse, clutching his medical kit. There was confusion inside, the servants rushing this way and that, and relatives barking orders, all of them clearing a path to the stairs to permit the doctor to dash hurriedly up towards the big master bedroom where Ellen Denton lay breathing heavily. And then outside the room there was the awesome state of suspense, worry, fear for Ellen's life. Until at last, Dr. Sheridan stepped out into the hall, nodded reassuringly to Ellen's brother-in-law.
You mean she's all right, Doctor? I found her in time.
Yes. Yes, you did, but just in time.
Oh, thank heaven. I can't tell you how grateful we are that you got here so quickly, Dr. Sheridan. You see, Dr. Granger, our family doctor, is away and...
I'm glad I could make it. What I can't understand is why a relatively young woman like Mrs. Denton would try to kill herself. Why, she took enough sleeping pills...
She's still in love with her husband, Doctor.
You see, Mrs. Denton lost her husband about 8 months ago, Doctor.
That's too bad. Was it sudden?
Well, Jeffrey just disappeared. Ran away, I guess.
Charles.
Ran away? That seems odd under the circumstances.
What do you mean by circumstances, Doctor?
Well, you say Mrs. Denton was deeply in love with her husband, and I understand she's quite wealthy.
But it was quite strange. One day last winter, Ellen, Mrs. Denton, that is, drove down from the country with the maid to open up the townhouse here. Jeffrey stayed up at the Dentons' estate in Ferrisville. He was supposed to drive down the next day, but no one's heard from him since.
I see.
Ellen's done everything she could to find him. Told the police all about him, hired private detectives. But so far, she's drawn a blank.
It's been terribly hard on Ellen. We've all worried about her and tried to do everything we could for her. And now this overdose of sleeping...
Well, you'd better watch Mrs. Denton quite closely for a while.
Don't you worry about that, Dr. Sheridan. We'll watch Ellen every minute.
You say you're Mrs. Denton's brother-in-law?
Yes, that's right. Ellen and my brother Jeffrey were married nearly 15 years ago. Valerie here's my wife.
I see. Well, if you need me before Dr. Granger returns...
We'll call on you, Doctor, I assure you. And thanks again for coming over so quickly. Now, Valerie, we better go inside.
Yes, dear.
And be careful what you say to Ellen, won't you, Valerie? Keep her mind off of it.
Of course, dear.
You lean back on your pillows, don't you, Ellen? And listen as the doctor leaves. And a moment later, Charles and Valerie slip into your room softly, whispering so as not to disturb you. You know the correct thing would be to thank Charles for saving your life. But it doesn't seem the time for correct things, does it?
You know, don't you, Charles? I'll be a long time forgiving you for this.
I'd never have forgiven myself if I hadn't found you in time, Ellen.
Just like him. Like Jeffrey. Kind, considerate. You're a fortunate girl, Val.
I think so. Oh, but you must get your rest, Ellen. Rest and...
And what? Forget? Is that what you were going to say? Why,
Never mind. Valerie, I'll meet you downstairs. Here, Ellen. Let me fix your pillow.
Please, Charles, leave me alone. You stopped me. Prevented me from doing the one thing I could do that would make forgetting a possibility.
Well, Ellen,
Leave me alone. That seems to be the way the world wants me. All alone.
There are hurt looks on their faces as they leave, Ellen. You've never been exactly gentle with them, have you? Perhaps because Charles does remind you so much of Jeffrey. But a week later in the garden, you do your best to appear civil. You're almost in good spirits until you have a visitor.
There's someone to see you, Ellen, dear. I hope it's all right. Over here, Mr. Nathan.
Fred Nathan. Well, it's been long enough.
Yeah. Sorry, Mrs. Denton.
3 months, to be exact. 3 months since you assured me that if my husband were alive, you, the finest private investigator in the business, could find him. Well?
Well, I haven't, Mrs. Denton, no, but I sort of got sidetracked. A case in Sacramento. It was quite by accident, you see, that I stumbled onto some rather exciting information.
Oh?
While I was working on the Sacramento job, I ran into somebody. A lady who manages a boarding house. She said that a man answering the description of Jeffrey Denton, your husband, showed up there a short while ago.
What?
Yeah, she was pretty definite about it. Said he, acted strange, sort of, like maybe an amnesia victim.
I can't believe it. Can we see this man? Can we talk to him?
He, left the boarding house about a week ago.
Oh.
But I brought something along. Something he left behind. Let me unwrap it here. Yeah, there we are.
What? Why, it's a sport coat. The same kind Jeffrey was wearing the last time we saw him.
Yeah, I figured that'd interest Mrs. Denton.
Interest? Me? Well, it's Nathan. I don't know what to say.
Ellen?
Here, now, don't do that.
Oh.
Hey, give me a hand here, lady.
Yes,
Mrs. Denton's fainted.
It's all right, Ellen. You're in your room. Mr. Nathan and Valerie, they carried you up.
But
You fainted.
It was the jacket, Jeffrey's sport coat. When Mr. Nathan showed it to us.
Oh, yes, I remember now. Valerie, where is Mr. Nathan? I'd like to talk to him.
Now, you've had quite enough for one day. You almost have to send for the doctor again. You can see Nathan another time. He'll be back.
Yes. Yes, I suppose he will.
But isn't it wonderful, Ellen? At least you know now that Jeffrey's alive.
Yes. Now I know.
Ellen, you just lie back and rest. We'll see you at dinner. Come along, Valerie.
Well, Ellen, it's a shock, isn't it? Jeffrey alive. That's what Fred Nathan said. But you don't believe him, do you? Because you're certain your husband Jeffrey was wearing that same sport coat the night you killed him. Everything had been going so well, hadn't it, Ellen? Yes. You'd been playing the role of the grief-stricken wife to perfection. The apparent suicide attempt, carefully planned and carried out, was a convincing performance, wasn't it? Just the right touch. But now your private investigator, Fred Nathan, is back. And it's entirely possible he'll ruin everything. You wonder about Fred Nathan and what he's up to. You decide to do a bit of investigating on your own. And the very next day, you drop into the tailor shop where you used to go so often with Jeffrey when he selected his suit materials.
Why, yes, Mrs. Denton. Now that you mention it, there was a gentleman in asking for that pattern. Come to think of it, he even mentioned your late husband's name. It's how we found the material.
And you made up a sport coat for him?
Why, yes. Dreadfully sorry if you object. We never allow duplications, of course, but in this case, with your husband...
Never mind. And this man, what was his name?
Nathan. Yes, that's the name he gave. Fred Nathan.
May 21st, 1950, The Whistler on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox here on your favorite radio station. The West Coast program, The Whistler, May 21st, 1950, The Return.
It's a terrible feeling, isn't it, Ellen? And you wonder what Fred Nathan is up to, this private investigator you hired yourself, to make it look as if you were interested in finding your dead husband, Jeffrey. You thought it was a safe move, didn't you, Ellen? Perfectly safe. With Jeffrey buried in the dahlia beds of your country estate nearly 8 months ago. But this Fred Nathan, he's up to something. And you can't understand his approach at all. You wonder if he's trying to trap you. Realize that you must be on your guard as you wait for his next move. And then finally, on a day when you and Valerie are paying a visit to a fashionable dress salon, you receive another shock.
Now here, ladies, we see the new off-shoulder drape for summer wear. A smart new design by Bouvet.
It's
just wonderful, Lenny.
Darling, how perfect.
I'll ask our model, Miss Arnold, to pass closer so that you may observe the fine texture of the material. The superior workmanship.
Oh, I do love pretty material.
Arnold? Kitty Arnold?
What'd you say, Ellen?
Oh, nothing.
Oh, I like the dress, don't you? I have
Valerie, I'm getting a headache. I didn't want to mention it, but, well, could we go?
Well, of course, Ellen, at once.
The headache is an excuse, isn't it, Ellen? A lie to get you outside, out of sight of that model, Miss Arnold. Kitty Arnold. She was the girl in the case, wasn't she? The other woman. The reason that you, Ellen Denton, killed your husband in a jealous rage. As you and Valerie drive on to the house, the memory of that night 8 months ago engulfs you. That night when you sneaked back to the estate, saw Kitty leave with the side door, the quarrel, and then finally Jeffrey lying dead at your feet. And now Kitty Arnold, who was supposed to be in New York, she's here. And you wonder if it has anything to do with the private detective, Fred Nathan. You're still thinking about it when you arrive at the house. There, Charles has some news for you.
Fred Nathan was here, Ellen. Left just a moment ago.
Oh?
Uh-huh. Wanted to see you. I told him I didn't know when you'd be back.
Was it about Jeffrey?
Well, yes. Said he'd run across another lead. Told me to tell you that he's taking the 8 o'clock plane to Los Angeles. He seemed to be quite excited about the whole thing.
I wonder what Jeff is doing in Los Angeles.
Well, Valerie, we aren't certain he's there.
But Mr. Nathan seems to think so.
Well, yes.
Why, Charles?
Well, I don't know. Nathan didn't go into that, Ellen.
Oh,
That's entirely possible, you know. Jeff was in business there years ago. Knows the city, has friends.
Oh, yes. Yes, of course.
Oh, Ellen, I just know Jeff will turn up soon. You'll see.
Of course he will.
Well, come along, dear. We'd better freshen up before dinner. Charles, be a darling and see to the cocktails, will you?
Already taken care of that, now.
Well, I hope you remembered I told the cook we're having an early dinner.
Oh, of course. She's been sulking around the house ever since. You know how she hates to have a routine disturbed.
Early dinner? What is all this, Valerie?
Well, have you forgotten, dear? We're going up to Ferrisville for the weekend. Charles is going there tonight to get things in order.
Oh, yes, I had forgotten.
Gosh, I suppose we could all go tonight for that matter and help Charles.
Oh, no need of that. I could manage.
No, I couldn't go, not tonight.
Oh?
No, you see, well, as I said, it completely slipped my mind. I made several appointments here in town for tomorrow morning.
Oh, you couldn't cancel them, I suppose.
No, not very well. You run along with Charles. I'll drive up sometime tomorrow afternoon.
Nonsense. I'll stay here with you, dear. You can manage, can't you, Charles?
I said I could, Val.
Well, of course you can. Well, it's all settled then.
You lied to them, didn't you, Ellen? There are no appointments. But you do have a good reason for staying in town overnight. And that reason is Fred Nathan. You've made up your mind to have a talk with him before he goes to Los Angeles and find out, if you can, what he's up to. Dinner over, you hurry up to your room and change your clothes. Before leaving, you decide to call him to make certain he's in. Then, as you pick up the phone...
Look, Nathan, I can't talk with you now. Ellen's apt to be down in a minute or so.
I just wanted to see how she took the sport coat and the L.A. info, that's all.
You're doing the trick. It's just what I wanted.
Good. Want me to dig up a few more leads?
No, not right away. We've got to move cautiously. She might get onto us, you know.
Okay. I get it, Mr. Denton. Well, see you.
Oh, and by the way, Nathan, don't forget, I'd rather my wife, Valerie, didn't know about this. It's just between the two of us.
Right. Bye.
You can't believe what you've heard, can you, Ellen? But as you replace the receiver, the whole picture becomes clear to you. Charles, he's in on it with Fred Nathan. You realize he suspected you all along, and now he's trying to trap you. Expose you as his brother's killer. Downstairs again, you find him getting ready to leave for your estate at Ferrisville. Charles, your dear, devoted brother-in-law, always so concerned for your welfare, so anxious to help you during the dark days of your grief. And now you're sure that all the time he's been planning to trick you, reveal you as a murderess. And then suddenly a thought strikes you. Charles never did get along with his brother, and you wonder if perhaps there's something else on his mind besides trying to trap you as his brother's killer. Blackmail, Ellen. That could be it, couldn't it? Charles doesn't really have much money of his own. It would be a perfect opportunity for him to get his hands on your fortune. A little at a time.
Penny for your thoughts, Ellen.
Oh.
I'm about ready to shove off. Station wagon out front, Val?
Yes, it is. Everything's already waiting for you.
Good.
Charles, you will drive carefully, won't you?
Sure. Well, see you ladies tomorrow,
Sometime in the afternoon. Bye, dear.
Bye. Oh, and Ellen,
Yes?
don't worry, Now that we have Nathan on the job, I'm sure everything's going to turn out all right. We'll find Jeffrey. Soon. Very soon. I have a feeling.
He's clever, isn't he, Ellen? And as you watch the station wagon drive away, you wonder how close Charles is to the truth, don't you, Ellen? What he really meant when he said Jeffrey would be found soon. Long after he's gone, you pace the floor of the library. Valerie has gone upstairs to bed, and you're glad she's out of the way so you can slip over to see Nathan. A half hour later, you park your car in front of a small apartment house uptown and hurry upstairs to apartment 304.
Why, Mrs. Denton.
May I come in, Mr. Nathan?
Well, sure.
Thank you.
This is an unexpected pleasure, Mrs. Denton.
I heard you were at the house this afternoon.
Yeah, that's right.
May I sit down?
Sure. Sit down, Mrs. Denton.
Thank you. Charles, my brother-in-law tells me that you have a new lead.
Yeah, that's right. New lead. Fix your drink, Mrs. Denton?
Thank you, no. What makes you think my husband is in Los Angeles?
Well, I've had a friend of mine checking a few things for me, Mrs. Denton. A fellow up on that Sacramento lead.
I see.
Sent him your husband's photograph. He's been showing it around in L.A. Nurse in one of the emergency hospitals down there thought she recognized... Yes, only some man tapped by an auto. As it turned out, he wasn't seriously hurt. He was released the day after the accident.
Then you know where he is now.
No. No, you see, the address he left turned out to be a phony. Yeah, phony.
Oh, I see.
That's why I thought I'd better run down there myself, take over.
Yes, of course, and you'll spare no expense. I'm a wealthy woman, Mr. Nathan. I can afford to pay your price, whatever it is.
I know, Mrs. Denton. We'll find your husband. Don't worry about that. Of course, it might take a little longer than we expect.
I'm prepared for that. I'll make it well worth your while, Mr. Nathan.
Sure.
But we haven't discussed your fee yet, have we?
No hurry. I'm a pretty reasonable guy when it comes to finances.
Perhaps we could talk it over now.
Well, sure, but I really don't have much time. You know, I got to catch that 8 o'clock plane to L.A.
Oh, yes, of course. I'd forgotten.
Now, leave it to me, Mrs. Denton. Just leave it to Fred Nathan.
He's lying about going to Los Angeles, isn't he, Ellen? Of that you're almost certain. Yet you're a little puzzled as you leave his apartment, not quite sure what he's up to. He acted strangely, didn't he, when you mentioned money, his fee, your willingness to pay his price. It was an opening for him, but he didn't take it. Perhaps he wants more time to think it over.
And the conclusion of The Whistler and the return, May 21st, 1950, when Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox continues following these messages from your favorite radio station. Just going to take a minute here to tell you about the big savings going on now, the clearance sale at mypillow.com. And you know, I've talked about how in my office I have a pair of my slippers, and they're really comfortable, and they're on clearance right now. The mypillow.com slippers, $25 a pair, limit 10. And I would buy 3 or 4 more pairs. Unfortunately, they're out of my size. They also have sheets, pillowcases, clothing items, all on special right now. Go to mypillow.com, click on the clearance tab at the top of the page, use my promo code Wyatt, or call 1-800-928-4715. Limited sizes remaining in the MyPillow slippers, limited colors on other items. mypillow.com, clearance tab, promo code Wyatt, 1-800-928-4715. While The Whistler was primarily a West Coast program because Signal Oil was only on the West Coast, there were some attempts to bring the show to the East Coast, and it was primarily used as summer series to replace shows that were taking the summer off. May 21st, 1950, The Whistler on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox.
But there was something he said, Ellen, that gave you a good idea of what was on his mind.
We'll find your husband. Don't worry about that. Of course, it might take a little longer than we expect.
Yes. You're certain now it's blackmail. But it's not going to be called that, not at the beginning. No. The investigation will drag on and on. There will be more fake leads, more trips. And for each, there will be a fee, special expenses. He and Charles could make a good thing of it for years and years, couldn't they? But it isn't going to happen, is it, Ellen? You've made up your mind to that. You hurry out into the street, slip in behind the wheel of your car, and sit there to think things out. Your thoughts are interrupted as you see a cab pull up in front of Nathan's apartment. A moment later, he hurries out of the building, steps inside the cab. As it moves away, you decide to follow.
Yes, ma'am.
That train just pulling out, is that the one to Los Angeles?
No, ma'am. That's the northbound. Greenpoint, Valley Town, Ferrisville.
Ferrisville, I see. Thank you.
Now you know Fred Nathan lied about going to Los Angeles, don't you, Ellen? He's taking the train to Ferrisville, your estate there. And you wonder why. And then suddenly you remember. Charles, he'll be there. Yes, probably Charles' idea, wasn't it? To drive up to the estate tonight and meet Nathan there. They're up to something, aren't they, Ellen? As you drive away from the station and swing onto the highway and race into the night toward Ferrisville, you wonder if they know where Jeffrey is buried. It's almost midnight when you reach the deserted railroad station at Ferrisville. Reach it less than a minute before the train from the city pulls in. A single passenger gets off, Fred Nathan. As the train starts to roll again, you see Nathan walk across the platform and then into the waiting room. You move along the platform, keeping well in the shadows, and then stop near an open window.
Yeah.
You can hear him inside,
right.
talking on the phone.
Yeah, I just got in, Mr. Denton. Huh? Yeah, I think we better make sure where we stand before we make another move. No, tell you about it later. Yeah, okay. I'll wait for you.
They're going to make sure, aren't they, Ellen? You know what that means, don't you? You step back into the shadows as Nathan comes out of the waiting room, walks past you. You watch him as he stops at the edge of the platform, lights a cigarette. He glances up the track, the fast-approaching southbound express. You stare at the headlight of the approaching train, coming closer and closer. Then at Nathan on the platform, standing near the tracks, his back toward you. You know just what you have to do.
All right, Mr. Nathan, it's your turn.
The railroad station at Ferrisville was no longer deserted. Curious passengers from the southbound express milled about the platform, talked excitedly about the tragedy which had just occurred. A few of the more curious had wandered inside the waiting room, where Police Lieutenant Ansley listened to a witness tell his story.
I tell you, Lieutenant, I could swear she was trying to push me right into the path of that train.
What do you think of that, Mr. Denton?
It's utterly ridiculous, Nathan, and you know it.
Okay. All I know is I'm standing there when I hear somebody come up behind me. I turn and she goes right past, falls off the platform, right in front of that train.
It couldn't have been anything but an accident, I tell you. Why in the world would Ellen want to push you in front of that train? Why would she want to kill you, Nathan?
I don't know. She acted kind of funny at my apartment tonight. That's why I came down to see her. I got the idea she knew what we were up to. I figured we better make sure before we made another move.
And, just what were you up to, Mr. Nathan?
Perhaps I'd better explain, Lieutenant. You see, my brother Jeffrey, her husband, disappeared about 8 months ago. Poor Ellen took it very hard, went all to pieces. Even tried suicide.
Is that so?
My wife and I had the devil's own time after that, keeping our eye on her. We were afraid she'd try it again, unless... Well, that's when I got the idea to hire Mr. Nathan.
To do what?
I hired Mr. Nathan to pretend to dig up some information on Jeffrey. His whereabouts, things like that. Faked, of course.
I see.
We did it for Ellen's sake, Lieutenant. To give her something to live for. Some hope that Jeffrey was alive. Poor girl. She was so certain that her husband was dead. Well, maybe she was right. If she was, they're together again now.
Featured in tonight's story were Bill Foreman, Betty Lou Gerson, David Ellis, Rye Billsbury, and Francis Robinson. The Whistler was produced and directed by George W. Allen, with story by Joel Malone, music by Wilbur Hatch, and was transmitted to our troops overseas by the Armed Forces Radio Service. The Whistler is entirely fictional. All characters portrayed on the Whistler are also fictional. Any similarity of names or resemblance to persons living or dead is purely coincidental.
May 21st, 1950, The Whistler on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, here on your favorite radio station. Now on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, another episode of Lum and Abner, thanks to Ted at RadioMemories.com, as The Whole Mess with the Hogs continues on May 21st, 1935.
Howdy, everybody. Here we are, all ready to take you down to Pine Ridge for another visit with Lum and Abner, brought to you by the makers of Horlicks, the original malted milk. And now, let's see what's happening down in Pine Ridge. Squire Skimp is now in Chicago, attempting to market the hogs for Lum and Abner, which they received from their chain letter. Well, yesterday, however, they received a long-distance telephone call from him advising that there was no market for the hogs at this time. and he would have to keep them there until he could get a good price for them. As a result of the call, the old fellows have had to temporarily abandon the idea they had of having a statue made of themselves to present to the citizens of Pine Ridge. As we look in on Lum and Abner today, we find them down at the Jot 'em Down store. Evidently, they have just received a wire from Squire Skimp. Listen.
Read it again, Lum.
Well, all it says is, sold hogs today. Stop. Will be home tomorrow. M.K. Skimp.
Well, I just can't wait to find out how much he got for 'em.
Well, he said yesterday over the phone that he's going to wait till the market went up before he sold them. I don't believe we could have picked a better man to handle it for us than him, you know.
Oh, no, Squire's a sharp trader, all right. He'll give 'em a skinning up there, I bound you, too.
I'll bet he's got that hand satchel of his just crammed full of money. Grannies, we can go ahead and have that statuary made now.
Oh, my goodness, I didn't hope you'd forgot about that, Lum.
Well, you don't have to go in on it, Abner. I ain't begging you to let me make a hero out of you. If you don't want in it, why, just say so.
Well, I was talking to Elizabeth about it, Lum, and she don't think much of the idea neither. She thinks it's just a waste of money.
Why, she'd be proud to death of you, Abner. She could go down by there on the square and see you standing there by the side of me and point you out to her friends and say, there stands my husband, Abner.
Well, I told her that, but she said it's bad enough to have to look at me around the house out running into a statuary of me every time she went downtown.
Well, I don't want to argue with you. If you don't want your name to go down in history as Peabody, the great hog king, I'll just put one up of me by myself.
Well, you go ahead. Just put yourself up there, Lum, and then Elizabeth will see it, and more likely she want me to have one then.
Well, now, that sort of changes things up then. If just one of us is going to be on the monument, it won't be no trouble to find one here in the catalog. It'll work all right.
Yeah, I noticed there's a lot of them in there where there's just one man by himself.
Yeah, I wish there was one with a hog standing there by him. It'd be just the same.
Yeah. And I believe you're going to have to give up the idea of that hog, old Lum.
Yeah, looks like it. I don't know as I just have to have a hog in it, but it'd be nice if I could, you know.
Yeah.
Save the monument maker all the bother putting one in there.
Yeah, sure.
See, if the reading down to bottom says Lum Eddard's the hog king, that ought to be enough. Everybody knows what a hog looks like anyway without putting up a monument of him. They'll look just the same 100 years from now, more than likely.
No, if I was you, I'd just be standing there by myself, I believe.
Yeah, hand me that catalog there. Let me look at some more of them pictures of monuments.
Yeah, sure, here.
I don't know where I ought to be sitting down or standing up or riding a horse or what I ought to be doing.
Well, if I was you, Lum, wanted it to look natural, I believe I'd have myself sitting down. Or asleep, one.
Asleep?
Yeah.
Now, wouldn't that look fine, a hog king asleep?
Yeah, that'd be a good name for it. A hog king asleep.
Well, I want to have myself doing something, though. Fighting or waving a flag or drawing a sword or something like that.
Yeah, you about put that thing up down there on the square, and these farmers come in here on a Saturday won't be able to use that hitching rack. Won't be able to get a team within 100 yards of that monument.
Yeah, that's right. Maybe I better be just sitting there. Sort of like this one of Abraham Lincoln's here.
What's that thing there, Lum?
What's that?
Yeah, that ain't no monument, is it?
Why, sure it is. Can't you read? Washington's monument. Monument of George Washington.
Is that what it says down there?
Why, sure. Did you never see a picture of that before?
No, I reckon not. Well, it don't look a thing like him, does it?
No, it looks about like some of Caleb Wehunt's work, don't it?
Yeah.
He could well make one like that of me, I'll bet you. I reckon George Washington's had about as much trouble as I'm having trying to find somebody to make one of him.
Well, now, Lum, of course, it ain't none of my business, but Elizabeth says that a body ain't supposed to put up a statuary of himself. She says if the folks here in Pine Ridge wanted a monument of us, why, they'd raise the money and do it themselves.
Well, yeah, they do in most places, but these folks around here don't know that. I've had this idea in mind for 15 years, and there ain't been a soul even suggested it to me. Trouble with these folks around here is they don't think about nobody but themselves. Selfishest bunch of people I ever seen in my life.
Well, maybe they don't want you to have one, Lum.
Huh?
I say maybe that they don't want you to have one up there, or maybe they don't know that you want it. If they knowed, maybe, why, they'd put one up. That's what they do, circulate a petition and get you one.
Wait a minute. Now, Granny, you give me idea there. Abner, you can get out and circulate a petition. What's the matter with you doing that?
You mean try to raise enough money to pay for it?
Well, I don't particularly care about how much money you get. I'd just like to have as many folks' names on a petition as I could. You can get out and raise what money you can, and I'll pay the difference.
Well, I don't mind to carry it around if you want me to. You might find somebody that'll sign it.
Well, Grandpap and Cedric will be glad to sign it, I know. If they don't, I'll fire 'em both. I'll tell them that.
Oh, no, I don't think you'll have no trouble with them, Lum. And I'll sign it, too. I don't see no harm it can
Well,
do.
there's 4 of us already. 3 of us. You 3. Granny, I'm proud we thought of that, Abner. Evelina said the other day she never thought I ought to put one up till somebody asked me.
No.
But she'd be glad to hear this movement's been started. Well, let's see here. Get one of these picked out here. Now, we're getting someplace now.
Swan, you ought to know that catalog by heart, Lum, as much as you've looked through it.
Yeah, but I can't make up my mind where I want to be Grant or Lincoln or... Wait a minute. There's a feller sitting there that might do if he didn't have such a worried look on his face.
What's he doing there, hitting himself in the chin?
No, he's sitting there with his chin resting on his fist. That's called the thinker. He's studying about something.
What?
I don't know. I ain't no mind reader. Nothing, I don't reckon.
Nothing?
Well, I mean, that's just a statuary, Abner. It couldn't think.
Yeah. How about this one over here, Lum? Isn't here that feller throwing that plate or whatever he's doing there?
No, that's a discus thrower. How about decided this one here's one to get? U.S. Grant. I like that in a Lincoln's a heap better, but...
Well, why don't you get it, then?
Well, it just looks foolish. Lincoln and Grant is both the same price in the catalog there, and with Grant I get a horse throwed in to boot.
Yeah, that's right. All you get with Lincoln, just that chair, and it don't look very comfort to me, Lum.
No, I believe Grant's the best buy. Let's see, that's number 3062, price $6.80 each.
While you're deciding on that, Lum, I believe I'll call up Mose Moots and see if he'll make a donate to that statuary of you.
Well, he ought to. I get all my barber work done down there.
Yeah, I'll just remind him of that, too. I believe we got him there, Lum. Yes, sir, I'll tell him. Hello? Mose? Why, this here's Abner Peabody talking. Oh, tolerably well, but that ain't what I called up to tell you. Me and Lum's getting up a petition.
You're getting it up, not me.
Yeah, that's right, it is me, ain't it?
Well, tell him, not me.
Hello, Mose. I'll have to start all over again. Just me is getting out a petition to put up a monument of Lum. Lum Edwards. No, he ain't dead yet. Why, 'cause he's a hog king now. Well, he says he is anyway. Why, a statuary of him. He's going to put it down there in front of Dick Huddleston's store by the watering trough.
Yeah, just this side of it.
Yeah, he might. Well, what I called you up for, Mose, he wants to know if you'll sign the petition and make a donation.
You want to know?
You want to know?
Oh, for goodness sake.
Yeah, to help pay for it. Well, fine. All right, I'll bring it down there then, Mose. All right. Well, much obliged. Goodbye.
Mose was in favor of it, was he?
Yeah, he said he'd sign it and that we could put him down for 25 cents.
Well, good for Mose. I knowed I could depend on him. Giving a quarter, huh?
Yeah. He said he never had the cash money, but he'd give you a quarter's worth of barber work and you could trade it out long.
Well, fine. Now, there's a man that appreciates what I've did for the community. Fine citizen, that Mose Moose.
Yeah, he was joshing there. Said he'd believe it'd do more good if you'd put it out in your garden for a scarecrow.
Yeah, bound for Mose to make fun of himself. Abner, I can see right now this petition is going over with a bang, 100%. Believe I'll just call up that monument maker in there and have him go ahead and order this one of Grant right now.
Yeah, if you're going to have it, well, you may as well get it and get your use out of it, sure.
Yeah, I hope he can just rush the order right on through.
And I'll be sure and have him change a face on it now, Lum. You and that statuary of Grant don't look a thing alike.
Well, I explained all that to him the other day. Central, ring the OK Monument Works, please, Mom. All right, I'll hold it.
Be sure and tell him what you want wrote on there, Lum. Don't want to forget now to have your name put on it after going to all the trouble of putting it up.
No, wait a minute. Hello? Mr. Krause?
Yeah.
This is Lum Edwards.
I can recollect that name, Sauerkraut.
I was in there and got a catalog from you a day or two ago to order myself a statuary. Yeah, well, I picked out the one I want now. If I just give you the catalog number, you can order it all right, can't you? Well, it's number 3062. Yes, sir. Now, I'll send you a picture myself so you can change the face up to look like me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now I want you to carve down underneath there, instead of U.S. Grant, put Lum Edwards, Hog King.
Lum, that don't sound right. Hog King.
Wait a minute. What's the matter?
I say that don't sound right, Hog King. You never heard anybody say England King. They always say King of England.
Granny, that's right.
Why, sure.
Wait a minute. Hello? Mr. Krause? Change that reading down there. Instead of saying Hog King, say Lum Edwards, King of the Hogs. That's right, King of the Hogs. Granny, that ought to make them sit up.
Lum Edwards, Justice of the Peace, President of the Jot 'em Down Store, President of the School Board, and King of the Hogs. Ladies and gentlemen, don't forget that we have only a limited quantity of Lum and Abner's autographed pictures. These big 8x10 photographs, you know, show your old Pine Ridge philosopher friends both in character, complete with mustache and spectacles, and as they appear in real life, two good-looking men. You'll certainly get a kick out of comparing the quaint old fellows with their real selves. All you have to do to get one of these photographs is to write your name and address on the back of a wrapper from a half-pound or larger size package of Horlicks malted milk. Send your wrapper to Lum and Abner, care of the station to which you are now listening, and they'll send you a picture right away. Don't forget about that limited quantity, though. This offer will have to be withdrawn very soon. This is Carlton Brickert, speaking for Lum and Abner and Horlicks, who now bid you all good night and good health.
May 21st, 1935, Lum and Abner on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Thanks to Ted over at RadioMemories.com for supplying us these nicely restored Lum and Abner shows. Also visit our webpage, classicradio.stream. Stream our shows. Learn about building a classic radio collection of your own. You can contact me, find our social media links, and if you'd like to buy me a copy to help us acquire additional classic radio programs, and to maintain our social media links, I'd love for you to do that too. That's classicradio.stream. Classicradio.stream. Thank you for tuning in. Tell all your friends the greatest radio shows of all time are right here at this spot on the dial. Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on your favorite station.